The Moroccan economy is, how do you say, an underdeveloped, not developed economy, I mean. And I can say also that we have, we can talk about first the structure of the GDP. We have an important share of the services, and the share of the agriculture is about 14 to 17%. I mean, not very important. The industry is around 13%, but the elasticity of the GDP to the variation of the production of agriculture is important. I mean, even if in the static analysis, the agriculture is not too important, in the dynamic, it's more important because around half of the population is rural, and there is an important industry of agriculture product, and it has an anyway. So the elasticity of the GDP to the agriculture is important. And there is another factor, maybe psychological factor, who explain that, because, you know, when there is no rain in the beginning of the year, people are very aware about that, so they don't consume, they don't invest, and when the rain is coming, they have more how do you say, good perspective, so they can expand, they can, and the economy can work again. It's one of the criterion or the condition, I mean, which explain the important elasticity of the GDP to agriculture products. So we have an important informal sector, very important. Voila. I think globally it's what we can say about the Moroccan economy. We have 9% of the GDP is coming from the remittances of workers outside. I mean, Moroccan working outside of Morocco.
We are suffering the largest contraction or decrease in productivity or output. We call GDP, gross domestic product, which is essentially just the total dollar value of all goods and services produced in the economy. We suffered the largest drop in that during this year, primarily because of the coronavirus epidemic. It has had a heavy impact across all different industrial sectors of the economy. Generally, people were, you can think of this in the simplest terms, in terms of the old saying that you can teach anybody or even a parrot to how to do economics, simply teach them to say supply and demand. And that's effective here. The two things that happen is that the coronavirus itself, even forgetting shutdowns or lockdowns of people into their residences or mandatory shutdowns of certain kinds of non-essential businesses, that's obviously going to have a huge effect on the output that's being produced if companies aren't open and workers have to stay home. But even when you don't do that, because it's a coronavirus and it spreads in the air and people understand that, and one of the difficulties or easiest ways to catch it is to be circulating in densely populated spaces. People aren't going.
Crisis is very special because it's not lack of demand crisis like the crises are used to face. This crisis since we had to do this containment, this crisis is on supply and on the demand. So some sector was affected from the supply side because the enterprises were closed. People can not go to work, so it was, it was shocked at the supply side. Not like in a war, because the production equipment and so on were safe, but the enterprises were closed. At the other hand, we have sectors that was affected from the side of demand. So in the case of agriculture in Morocco, it was not affected from the side of demand because people need to buy foods and so on. It was at one period affected not directly from the side of supply, but the transportation of product. So it was indirectly affected in the side of supply because the production was here, was done, but it was not possible to transport it to go to the market, to the population, to demand,
Yeah,
but it was only for one period, and it was very quickly the authority.
The heaviest affected sectors are service sectors. Anything that relies on customers coming in and meeting face to face to get your service or even product for that matter, if we thought, were heavily affected because the demand just wasn't there. People weren't coming out to go to restaurants, particularly small restaurants where there was barely any space, whatever. And then, of course, there were lockdowns all across the country beginning in the mid to late March that lasted for several weeks, a couple months. And as a consequence, what we call the hospitality industry was greatly affected.